I am Amanda Walker, 30 years old, and the owner of a restaurant empire nobody in my family bothers to acknowledge. For years they dismissed my culinary dreams, while praising my sister Diana, the doctor, and brother Thomas, the lawyer. Tonight at my mom Eleanor's 60th birthday celebration, Diana smirked as she directed me away from the family table. "We need the space for important guests," she said, pointing to a corner table where the servers ate. "You can sit with the staff." I swallowed my anger, knowing something she did not. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how this birthday dinner changed everything. The tension with my family started long before my mom's birthday dinner. Growing up in our suburban Boston home, my parents Eleanor and Richard Walker had very specific ideas about success. In their world, respect came from prestigious degrees and traditional professions. My father, a neurosurgeon, and my mother, a university professor, created an environment where academic achievement was the only currency that mattered. My sister Diana, 3 years older than me, was the golden child. She followed our father's footsteps into medicine, graduating top of her class and specializing in cardiology. My brother Thomas, 2 years, my junior, became the family's second success story when he graduated from law school and joined a prestigious firm specializing in corporate law. Family gatherings were dominated by discussions of Diana's latest difficult case or Thomas's high-profile clients. Then there was me. From the time I was 14, I was fascinated by food. Not just eating it, but the entire experience of dining. I would spend hours watching cooking shows, experimenting in our kitchen, and reading restaurant management books. By 16, I had started a small catering business for neighbors' parties. My parents viewed this as a cute hobby, something to keep me busy, until I got serious about my future. "Amanda has always been creative," my mother would tell relatives with a tight smile that never reached her eyes. The unspoken end to that sentence was clear to everyone, unlike her siblings who were actually making something of themselves. When I announced senior year that I wanted to attend culinary school, instead of pursuing pre-med, as my parents had always assumed, the household erupted. My father refused to speak to me for weeks. My mother cried as though I had announced plans to join a cult. Diana looked at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. "You want to be a glorified cook?" she asked one night. "Do you know how people will look at you compared to us? Is that really the life you want?" Despite their disapproval, I held firm. I attended the Culinary Institute of America on a partial scholarship, working nights to cover the remaining tuition my parents refused to pay. While Diana was celebrated for every academic achievement, and Thomas praised for each legal victory, my graduation from culinary school warranted only a perfunctory card from my parents. They didn't attend the ceremony. The following decade proved challenging but rewarding, as I worked my way up from line cook to sous chef to executive chef. When I opened my first small bistro at 25, my family attended the grand opening, but spent the evening looking uncomfortable and making suggestions about career alternatives should the restaurant fail. That bistro became profitable within 8 months. I reinvested everything, opening a second location 2 years later, then acquiring a struggling local chain of upscale casual restaurants that I revitalized with new menus and management. By 28, I owned 7 restaurants across Massachusetts. By 30, my company had expanded to 32 locations across New England, with plans for national expansion. None of this impressed my family. At best, they viewed my career as a quirky success story. At worst, particularly in Diana's case, they saw it as somehow less legitimate than their professional accomplishments. My restaurants might be profitable, but they weren't saving lives or arguing precedent-setting legal cases. When the invitation arrived for my mother's 60th birthday dinner, I felt a familiar mixture of hope and dread. The celebration would be held at the Wellington, an upscale restaurant known for its excellent seafood and elegant atmosphere. What my family didn't know was that 3 months earlier, my restaurant group had quietly acquired the Wellington and its sister locations as part of our expansion into fine dining. I spent hours selecting the perfect gift for my mother, an antique first edition of her favorite poetry collection that cost more than most people spend on a used car. I chose my outfit carefully, a tailored navy blue dress that projected professional success without being flashy, accessorized with the simple pearl necklace my grandmother had left me. Driving to the restaurant, I allowed myself to imagine a pleasant evening. Perhaps this milestone birthday would bring a new appreciation for our different paths in life. Maybe my mother would finally see that my hobby had become a legitimate career worthy of the Walker family name. That fragile hope shattered the moment I walked into the private dining room at the Wellington. The large round table in the center of the room was already filled with family members. My parents sat together surrounded by aunts, uncles, cousins, and my siblings with their partners. Diana's husband Gregory, a plastic surgeon, was entertaining everyone with a story that had the table laughing. Thomas's fiancée Jacqueline was showing off her engagement ring to our cousin Stephanie. Diana spotted me first, rising from her seat, with the practiced smile she reserved for people she considered beneath her. At 33, my sister had our mother's elegant bone structure and our father's confidence. She wore an expensive red dress that screamed successful doctor, her dark hair styled in a sophisticated updo. "Amanda, you made it," she said, kissing my cheek without making contact. Her eyes flicked over my appearance with a quick, dismissive assessment. "We've actually run out of room at the main table. I hope you don't mind sitting over there." She gestured toward a small table near the kitchen entrance, where two servers were taking their break. There were clearly 3 empty chairs at the family table. "Over there," I repeated, certain I had misunderstood. "With the staff." Diana's smile didn't waver. "We need to keep these seats for Uncle Paul and Aunt Margaret. They're running late, and Cousin Elizabeth might stop by later." Before I could protest, she was guiding me firmly across the room away from our family. I caught my mother's eye briefly, but she merely waved before returning to her conversation with my father. No one else at the table seemed to notice or care that I was being relegated to the service area. "You don't mind, right?" Diana continued in a hushed voice. "It's not like you're not used to being around restaurant staff." The slight emphasis on restaurant staff made it clear exactly what she thought of my career. The 2 servers at the table looked up in surprise as Diana deposited me in an empty chair. "This is my sister," she explained to them, with the condescending tone she typically reserved for explaining medical procedures to patients she deemed intellectually inferior. "She works in food service too, so I'm sure you'll have lots to talk about." With that, she turned and walked back to the family table, leaving me sitting with 2 strangers who looked as uncomfortable as I felt. The woman whose name tag read Maria offered an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry about that," she said quietly. "Would you prefer we find you another place to sit? I can speak to the manager." "No, it's fine," I replied automatically, years of conditioning making me minimize the slight. "Please don't trouble yourself." The male server Carlos pushed a bread basket toward me. "The focaccia is really good tonight," he offered kindly. "Chef Liam added rosemary from our rooftop garden." I took a piece, though my appetite had disappeared. From this vantage point I could see my entire family enjoying themselves without me. My mother was opening a gift from my brother, exclaiming with delight over whatever was inside. My father raised his wine glass in a toast that I couldn't hear. Uncle Robert glanced in my direction, once a flicker of discomfort crossing his face, before he deliberately turned his attention back to the celebration. I thought about making a scene. I could walk over there, confront Diana about her transparent attempt to humiliate me, and demand proper treatment at my own mother's birthday dinner. But what would that accomplish? Years of family dynamics had taught me that any emotional display would only reinforce their perception of me as less mature, less professional than my siblings. Instead, I sat quietly picking at my bread, and trying to look as though I wasn't bothered by being excluded from my own family celebration. Maria and Carlos attempted small talk, clearly trying to ease the awkwardness. "How long have you been in food service?" Maria asked politely. "About 12 years now," I answered deliberately, keeping my response vague. I wasn't ashamed of my career, but in that moment, explaining my actual position felt both boastful and pathetic. "That's impressive," Carlos said. "I'm working my way through culinary school myself. I want to be a pastry chef eventually." Under different circumstances, I would have enjoyed talking with Carlos about his ambitions. In my company, I prided myself on mentoring aspiring chefs and restaurant managers. But tonight, with my family's laughter in the background, I could barely focus on the conversation. I discreetly pulled out my phone and texted my boyfriend Daniel, "Guess who got seated at the staff table, while the real family celebrates?" Daniel, who ran a successful tech startup and had experienced his own share of family drama, responded immediately, "Are you serious? That's ridiculous. Want me to come rescue you?" "No," I typed back. "But Marcus is supposed to stop by tonight. Should be interesting. Take pictures of their faces when they realize who you are. Love you. You're worth 10 of them." Daniel's support helped steady me. We had been dating for 2 years, and he had witnessed firsthand both my business success and my family's dismissal of it. Unlike my relatives, Daniel saw my work as innovative and impressive. His encouragement had been crucial during the recent expansion of my restaurant group. From my isolated position, I observed my family through new eyes. Diana controlled every aspect of the evening, directing servers, deciding when gifts would be opened, and dominating conversations. Her husband Gregory deferred to her completely, his initial charm, giving way to a watchful carefulness whenever she spoke. My brother Thomas checked his watch repeatedly, his expression suggesting he had more important places to be. My mother, the supposed guest of honor, seemed content to let Diana orchestrate everything. Snippets of conversation drifted over. They discussed Thomas's recent court victory, Diana's consideration of opening her own practice, my cousin Rachel's acceptance to medical school. Not once did anyone mention my absence from the table or express curiosity about my life and work. Carlos returned from serving the main course to the family table. "Your sister asked for the wine list again," he told me. "She said the Cabernet wasn't properly aged." I winced. Diana's wine knowledge was limited to recognizing a few expensive labels she could drop into conversation. I hope she wasn't rude about it. Carlos shrugged diplomatically. "We get all types here. Personally, I think the Cabernet is excellent." Maria returned from delivering a plate of gluten-free options to my mother. "Your mom seems nice," she offered. "She actually thanked me, unlike some at that table." I nodded, throat tight with unexpected emotion. My mother wasn't deliberately cruel like Diana could be, just oblivious to how her passive acceptance of the family dynamic hurt me. She had never stood up for my choices or celebrated my successes, but she would thank a server for bringing bread. After 30 minutes at the staff table, I excused myself to the bathroom, needing a moment alone to regain my composure. In the elegant bathroom of the Wellington, I leaned against the marble countertop and took several deep breaths. The woman in the mirror looked composed on the surface, but I recognized the hurt in her eyes. For a moment I considered simply leaving. I could text my mother tomorrow with some excuse about feeling ill. It would be easier than enduring another hour of this humiliation. But as I splashed cold water on my face, I remembered the papers I had signed 3 months ago. The Wellington wasn't just any upscale restaurant, it was now one of mine. The acquisition had been kept quiet at the previous owner's request, as Marcus Williams had been the public face of the restaurant for over 20 years, and wanted a graceful transition. We had agreed to announce the ownership change next month, once all the legal details were finalized. Marcus had stayed on as the public-facing manager during the transition, while my team had already begun implementing subtle improvements to operations and menu. Few people outside our executive team knew about the change in ownership. I pulled out my phone and called Sarah, my executive assistant. "Amanda, aren't you at your mom's birthday dinner?" Sarah asked. "I am. Is Marcus planning to stop by tonight as discussed?" "Yes," he confirmed earlier. "He wants to introduce you to some of the regular customers who are dining tonight. Is everything okay?" I laughed softly. "Not exactly. My loving sister has seated me at the staff table while the family celebrates at the main table. Sarah gasped. She didn't. That's horrible. Standard Diana behavior, I replied. Listen, when Marcus arrives, don't have him paged or anything. Let him find me naturally. I think my family deserves to discover my position organically. Understood, Sarah said, a note of satisfaction in her voice. She had witnessed enough of my family's dismissive treatment over the years to appreciate the justice of the situation. After ending the call, I reapplied my lipstick and straightened my shoulders. I had built a multi-million-dollar business through hard work, smart investments, and genuine care for both customers and employees. If my family couldn't see my worth, plenty of others did. I returned to the staff table with renewed confidence. Maria had been called away to serve dessert options to another private party, but Carlos remained, now joined by a young woman named Jennifer, who worked as a hostess. Everything okay? Carlos asked, noting my changed demeanor. Much better, thank you, I replied, with a genuine smile. Tell me more about your pastry school. Which techniques are you finding most challenging? As Carlos enthusiastically described his struggle to perfect French macarons, I observed my family more objectively. Diana was now standing behind my mother, orchestrating the gift opening process like a surgeon directing an operating room. She dictated which present should be opened next, made appropriate appreciative noises, and occasionally shot directives at her husband Gregory, who scurried to fulfill her requests. My father sat somewhat detached from the proceedings, nursing a scotch and nodding along to whatever my uncle was saying. Thomas had his arm around his fiancée Jacqueline, but his attention was clearly on his phone beneath the table. From this vantage point, the family tableau seemed less intimidating and more pitiful. Diana's need for control, Thomas's disengagement, my parents' rigid adherence to outdated definitions of success, all of it spoke of limitation rather than achievement. Carlos finished his story about pastry school, and Jennifer shared her plans to complete a degree in hospitality management. I listened attentively, offering occasional advice without revealing my position. The industry can be tough, I acknowledged, but if you're passionate and willing to learn every aspect of the business, there are incredible opportunities. Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. That's what I keep telling my parents. They want me to major in accounting because it's more practical, but I love the hospitality world. Parents don't always understand alternative career paths, I said, unable to keep a touch of bitterness from my voice. Before our conversation could continue, Diana approached our table. She wore the tight-lipped expression I recognized from childhood, the one that meant she was about to express disappointment. Amanda, she said sharply, Mom is about to cut the cake. Could you at least join us for that part of the evening? And maybe look a little happier about being here. Everyone's noticing you're sulking. Carlos and Jennifer studiously examined their water glasses, clearly uncomfortable. I wasn't aware I was invited to join the main table, I replied evenly. You made it quite clear where I belonged when I arrived. Diana rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. There wasn't enough room earlier, that's all. There were 3 empty chairs. They were reserved, she snapped. Are you coming for cake or not? I maintained eye contact, refusing to be intimidated. I'll come over when it's time. Thank you for the invitation. Diana turned to leave, then paused. By the way, the service here is sliding. My water glass was empty for nearly 10 minutes. Maybe mention it to your server friends, since you're getting so chummy with them. After she walked away, Carlos let out a low whistle. Family, huh? Sometimes the people who hurt us most are the ones who are supposed to love us. Sounds like you speak from experience, I observed. He nodded. My father never approved of my career choice either. Wanted me to take over his construction business. We barely speak now. Our moment of connection was interrupted by a sudden shift in the restaurant's energy. The staff straightened faces, becoming more alert and professional. I knew what that meant before I even turned to look. Marcus Williams had arrived. Marcus Williams entered the private dining room, with the confident presence that had made him a legendary figure in Boston's restaurant scene. At 65, he cut an impressive figure in his perfectly tailored suit, silver hair, contrasting with his still youthful energy. Servers nodded respectfully as he passed, and diners at nearby tables smiled in recognition. I watched as he scanned the room, his eyes passing over my family table before landing on me. His face broke into a broad smile as he changed direction and headed straight for the staff table. "Boss," he called out, warmly, loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. "What on earth are you doing sitting back here with the staff? I've been looking all over for you." Carlos and Jennifer froze, their expressions shifting from confusion to shock as they processed Marcus's words. I could feel the attention of the entire room swiveling toward us, but I kept my focus on Marcus as he approached. "Hello, Marcus," I said calmly, standing to accept his enthusiastic handshake. "Just getting to know some of your excellent team members." "Our team members now," he corrected with a wink. "Though, I keep forgetting that. Old habits die hard after 20 years of ownership." From the corner of my eye, I could see Diana had stopped mid-sentence, her champagne glass suspended halfway to her lips. My mother's expression was puzzled, my father's brow furrowed. Thomas actually put his phone down. Marcus turned to Carlos and Jennifer, who were still staring at me with wide eyes. "Has our illustrious owner been keeping her identity a secret?" Typical Amanda, always wanting to understand the operation from the ground up before revealing herself. Owner Jennifer repeated weakly. Marcus laughed. "Amanda's restaurant group acquired the Wellington 3 months ago. Best decision I ever made, selling to someone who truly understands the art of fine dining. She's been revolutionizing restaurants across New England." He turned back to me. "The changes your team suggested to our supply chain have already increased our margins by 7%. Brilliant work." By now, the stunned silence from the family table was palpable. I finally allowed myself to look directly at them. My mother's mouth had formed a perfect O of surprise. My father was frowning as though trying to solve a difficult equation. Thomas looked genuinely impressed for perhaps the first time in our adult relationship. And Diana's face had drained of all color. She set down her champagne glass with a shaking hand, her expression cycling rapidly through disbelief, embarrassment, and calculation. Boss Marcus continued, oblivious to the family drama unfolding. "This simply won't do. Your table should be the best in the house. Carlos, please help me make arrangements immediately." Carlos, still processing the revelation, jumped to his feet. "Yes, sir, yes, Miss Walker." Marcus placed a hand on my shoulder. "I came by specifically to introduce you to the Richardsons. They've been loyal customers for 15 years and are dining in the main room tonight. They'd be thrilled to meet the new owner." He finally seemed to notice my family watching us. "Oh, are you here with guests? Please allow me to rearrange things so you can all sit together properly." Before I could respond, Marcus was striding toward the family table, hand extended toward my father. "Good evening, I'm Marcus Williams, managing partner of the Wellington. You must be Amanda's family. She's been too modest about her accomplishments, hasn't she? Acquiring our restaurant group was just her latest triumph." The look on Diana's face was worth every moment of humiliation I'd endured earlier. She appeared physically ill, her carefully constructed narrative about her unsuccessful sister crumbling before her eyes. My mother found her voice first. "Amanda owns this restaurant?" she asked faintly. "This one, and 37 others across the Northeast," Marcus confirmed proudly. "Your daughter is something of a phenomenon in the industry. Restaurant Business Magazine named her one of their 40 under 40 rising stars last year. Surely you saw the feature." My father cleared his throat. "I believe we missed that," he said stiffly. Marcus seemed genuinely surprised. "Well, that's a shame. Amanda's restaurant group has been outperforming major national chains in growth and customer satisfaction. The Wellington is just the latest jewel in her crown." Diana had recovered enough to attempt damage control. "How interesting," she said with a brittle smile. "Amanda's been so secretive about her work. We had no idea she was involved with such a Significant operation. Marcus laughed. Secretive. She's been profiled in the Wall Street Journal and the Boston Globe. The acquisition of our restaurant group made the front page of the business section 3 months ago. I finally stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Marcus's arm. Marcus, thank you for the introduction. My family and I were just celebrating my mother's 60th birthday. A milestone, Marcus exclaimed. This calls for our finest champagne. On the house, of course, though. I suppose that means on you, technically. He chuckled at his own joke. Let me have the staff rearrange the table to accommodate everyone properly. That's really not necessary, I began. But Marcus was already summoning the maître d' and issuing instructions. Within minutes, the staff had efficiently expanded the main table and added an elegant place setting for me at what Marcus insisted should be the position of honor beside my mother. As I took my seat, the executive chef Philippe emerged from the kitchen. Miss Walker, Marcus told me you were dining with us tonight, he said with genuine warmth. I've prepared a special dessert course for your mother's celebration. A variation on the chocolate soufflé you suggested during our menu planning session last month. My mother turned to me, bewilderment evident in her expression. You helped plan the menu here. Amanda has been instrumental in refining our culinary direction, Philippe explained. Her suggestion to incorporate more local seasonal ingredients has been brilliant for both quality and cost management. As Philippe returned to the kitchen, an uncomfortable silence fell over the table. My relatives exchanged glances, clearly trying to reconcile their perception of me with this new reality. Diana seemed to be shrinking in her chair, while Gregory studied his napkin with sudden fascination. After 12 years of dismissal and condescension, the tables had quite literally turned. I was no longer the family disappointment, but the successful business owner whose restaurant they had chosen for this special occasion. The irony wasn't lost on anyone at the table. The question now was how to navigate this dramatic shift in our family dynamic. The Wellington staff efficiently served dessert, their movements, precise and professional. My mother's birthday soufflé arrived with a single, elegant candle, accompanied by the chef's special selection of petite fours and chocolate truffles. As the family sang happy birthday with varying degrees of enthusiasm, I observed the subtle changes in how the servers interacted with me, now that my identity was known. Maria, who had been kind to me at the staff table, now addressed me as Miss Walker, and seemed slightly nervous when refilling my water glass. Carlos maintained his friendly demeanor, but added a respectful ma'am to his communications. The dynamics had shifted, not just with my family, but with everyone in the room. Once the singing concluded, and my mother blew out her candle, Diana attempted to regain control of the situation. She raised her champagne glass. To Mom, still fabulous at 60, and to Amanda, for her surprising business success. The awkward toast highlighted rather than smoothed over the tension. I smiled politely and sipped my champagne, allowing the uncomfortable silence to linger. After years of being talked over and dismissed, I saw no need to rescue my family from this moment of reckoning. Finally, Thomas broke the stalemate. So, Amanda, he said, leaning forward with newfound interest, how many restaurants did Marcus say you own now? 37. 38, including the Wellington. We're opening locations in Chicago and Philadelphia next quarter. That's impressive, Thomas admitted, sounding genuinely surprised. What's your annual revenue? Diana shot him a warning look, but my brother ignored her. For once, his lawyer's curiosity about business matters worked in my favor. We crossed 80 million last fiscal year, I replied calmly. Projections for this year are around 115 million with the new acquisitions. My father nearly choked on his soufflé. Million, he repeated. Yes, Dad, million. I took another sip of champagne, savoring the moment. The restaurant industry can be quite profitable when managed correctly. Gregory, Diana's husband, attempted to lighten the mood with a weak joke. Well, I guess we know who's picking up the check tonight. No one laughed. My mother set down her fork, her dessert barely touched. Amanda, why didn't you tell us about all this? The question contained layers of meaning, and everyone at the table knew it. Why hadn't I told them about my success? Or perhaps why hadn't they ever bothered to ask? I've tried to share my professional journey many times, I replied evenly. At Christmas 2 years ago, I mentioned expanding into the Providence market. Diana changed the subject to her hospital's new MRI machine. Last Thanksgiving, I talked about hiring a nationally recognized chef for our Boston flagship. Dad asked Thomas about his courtroom schedule instead. My Uncle Robert, who had remained quiet throughout the evening, cleared his throat. To be fair, Amanda, I did hear rumors about your restaurant group. There was an article in the Business Journal a few months back. Yes, when we acquired the Wellington Group, it was covered by several publications. I meant to ask you about it, he continued apologetically, but it slipped my mind. Diana, clearly uncomfortable with losing her position as the family's most successful member, attempted to reassert control. Well, this is all very interesting, but perhaps we should focus on Mom's birthday rather than Amanda's business. Actually, my mother interjected with surprising firmness. I'd like to hear more about Amanda's work. It seems I've been missing quite a lot. Diana's mouth tightened, but she fell silent. What would you like to know, Mom? I asked gently. Everything, she replied. How did you build all this? When did it start getting so big? For the first time in years, my mother looked at me with genuine curiosity rather than polite tolerance. I decided to give her the complete story, the one my family had never bothered to hear. After culinary school, I worked under Chef Julien Rousseau at La Maison. I became his sous chef within 2 years. When I opened my first restaurant, Harvest Table, I used the business plan I'd been developing since I was 22. We broke even in 6 months, which is nearly unheard of in the industry. As I continued explaining my business journey, I noticed my family's expressions changing. Thomas asked increasingly specific questions about business structure and investment strategy. My father, initially skeptical, began nodding with reluctant approval at the mention of profit margins and expansion metrics. My mother's eyes filled with tears when I described the 16-hour days and 7-day weeks I'd worked in the early years. You did all this while we thought you were just, she trailed off, unable to complete the sentence. Just a cook, I supplied. Just wasting my potential. Just avoiding a real career. She winced. We never understood what you were building. You never tried to understand, I corrected gently. There's a difference. Diana shifted uncomfortably in her seat. In fairness, Amanda, you could have been more forthcoming about your success. Would it have mattered? I asked, meeting her gaze directly. 2 years ago, I told everyone at Christmas dinner that my restaurant group had expanded to 15 locations. You changed the subject and asked Thomas about his new BMW. I don't remember that, Diana protested. I do, Thomas admitted. I remember because I thought 15 restaurants sounded impressive, but I assumed they were small places. I never followed up. He had the grace to look embarrassed. I'm sorry, Amanda. Diana's husband Gregory, perhaps sensing an opportunity to curry favor with his newly important sister-in-law, spoke up. You know, Amanda, I actually took clients to one of your restaurants last month. The Porterhouse in Hartford. The service was exceptional. Thank you, Gregory. That location won a regional award for customer experience last quarter. I turned to Diana. Actually, you've dined at my restaurant several times without realizing it. The anniversary dinner you and Gregory celebrated at Azul last year, that's one of mine. The business lunch spot near your hospital, Crescent Cafe, also mine. Diana's face flushed. How would I have known that? They don't have your name on them. Most successful restaurant groups don't advertise their ownership on the door, I explained. But the information is available on our website, in industry publications, and through a simple Google search. My mother reached across the table and took my hand. I'm so proud of what you've accomplished, Amanda, and ashamed that we never recognized it until now. Her words, the acknowledgement I'd been seeking for years, should have filled me with satisfaction. Instead, they highlighted how much I'd missed having my family's support during the difficult journey to success. "Thank you, Mom," I said softly. "That means a lot to hear." As the dinner plates were cleared away and coffee served, the conversation continued to center around my business in a way that would have been unimaginable hours earlier. My relatives asked questions that revealed both their newfound interest and their complete ignorance of my professional life. The fact that it took a public revelation by Marcus to make them see me as successful said everything about our family dynamic. When the evening began drawing to a close, my mother's birthday cake was served. As everyone enjoyed their slices, Eleanor surprised us all by standing to make an impromptu speech. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," she began. 60 years is a long time to be on this earth, and I'm grateful for all of you." She paused, looking directly at me. "But I need to acknowledge something important. I think as parents Richard and I have been too narrow in our definition of success. Tonight has been eye-opening in more ways than one." Diana stiffened beside her while Thomas nodded slowly. "Amanda," my mother continued, "I'm sorry we haven't given your career the respect it deserves. I'm sorry we needed someone else to tell us how successful you've become before we could see it ourselves. That's our failure, not yours." As my mother's words hung in the air, I felt a complicated mix of vindication and lingering hurt. The acknowledgement was meaningful, but it couldn't erase years of dismissal. The path to genuine family reconciliation would be longer and more complex than a single evening's revelation. As the evening wound down, guests began saying their goodbyes. Uncle Robert and Aunt Patricia hugged me with newfound appreciation before departing. Cousin Stephanie asked for my business card, suddenly interested in possible employment opportunities. Thomas lingered to ask more detailed questions about my business structure, while his fiancée Jacqueline complimented me repeatedly on the restaurant's ambiance. I accepted their attention graciously, though I couldn't help wondering how differently the night would have unfolded had Marcus never arrived. Would I have remained at the staff table, invisible to my own family? My parents prepared to leave, my father awkwardly mentioning that we should do lunch sometime to discuss my business ventures. My mother hugged me tightly, whispering another apology in my ear. I returned her embrace, our relationship too complicated to address fully in that moment. As the room emptied, Diana approached me. Her expression was controlled, but I could see the storm brewing beneath the surface. "Could we speak privately for a moment?" she asked, gesturing toward a quiet corner of the restaurant. I nodded, following her to a small alcove away from the remaining guests. For a moment, we stood in silence, two successful women, with a lifetime of competition and misunderstanding between us. "I had no idea," Diana finally said, her voice tight. "About the scope of your business, about your success." "You never asked," I replied simply. "You could have told us," she countered, a defensive edge creeping into her tone. "You could have made sure we understood what you were building." "Would it have changed how you treated me?" I asked. "Or would you have found other reasons to dismiss my career choice?" Diana's perfectly manicured nails tapped against her cocktail glass. "That's not fair. We all thought you were working in restaurants, not owning them. There's a significant difference. The fact that you think ownership is the only measure of success is exactly the problem," I said. "Even if I had been just an executive chef, that would be a legitimate career worthy of respect." "Don't twist my words," Diana snapped. "I'm trying to explain that we misunderstood your position." "No, you undervalued my entire industry," I corrected. "And you've spent years treating me like the family failure because I chose a path different from yours." "That's not true. Isn't it tonight you seated me with the staff rather than your precious family? What message were you trying to send?" Diana. Her composure cracked slightly. The table was crowded. There were 3 empty chairs. "You wanted to humiliate me." Diana's shoulders sagged suddenly, her defensive posture collapsing. "Maybe I did," she admitted quietly. "And I'm sorry for that. It was petty and childish." The unexpected apology caught me off guard. In our 3 decades as sisters, I could count on one hand the times Diana had admitted fault. Why? I asked. Why has it always been so important to you to keep me in a subordinate position? Diana looked away, staring at the elegant wallpaper as if it might provide an escape from this confrontation. You don't understand the pressure, she finally said. Being the oldest, being expected to set the standard. When you chose culinary school, everyone acted like it was charming that you were following your passion. No one ever talked about me following my passion. You love medicine, I said, confused. I love certain aspects of it, she clarified. But did anyone ever ask if I wanted to try something else? Dad decided I would be a doctor when I was 12. The path was set. This glimpse into Diana's perspective startled me. I had always seen her as the golden child reveling in our parents' approval. The idea that she might have felt trapped by their expectations had never occurred to me. That doesn't justify how you've treated me, I said firmly. No, it doesn't, she agreed. But maybe it helps explain it. Watching you break away, choose your own path. Part of me was jealous. And when it seemed like you were struggling in a second-rate career, it was easier to feel superior than to acknowledge that envy. I never struggled, I told her. I worked incredibly hard, but my business has been successful from the beginning. You just never bothered to notice. Diana nodded slowly. That's fair. I should have paid more attention. Should have asked more questions. We stood in silence for a moment, decades of sisterly competition hanging between us. Where do we go from here? Diana finally asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. One revelation doesn't erase years of dismissal. I need you to understand that your behavior has done real damage to our relationship. I understand, she said quietly. And I want to do better. Not because you own restaurants, but because you're my sister. The sincerity in her voice suggested this might be a genuine turning point rather than another manipulation. Still, years of experience made me cautious. Actions will matter more than words going forward, I told her. I'm willing to work on our relationship, but I need respect, not just because of my business success, but because every career deserves respect when pursued with passion and integrity. Diana nodded. I can do that. Or at least I can try. We rejoined the others in the main room. Thomas was deep in conversation with Marcus about restaurant industry trends, while my mother was admiring the architectural details of the dining room. Diana's husband Gregory approached me with an apologetic smile. Amanda, I want to apologize for not recognizing the significance of your work, he said quietly. And for going along with the family narrative about your career. I nodded in acknowledgement, too emotionally drained for another deep conversation. My mother called everyone together for a final family photo. As we arranged ourselves around her chair, I noticed subtle shifts in positioning. Instead of being relegated to the edge as usual, I was guided to stand directly behind my mother. Diana and Thomas flanked me, creating a united front of siblings that had rarely existed in reality. To new beginnings, my mother said, as the waiter prepared to take the photo, and to seeing each other clearly. As the camera flashed, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, vindication at finally being recognized, lingering hurt from years of dismissal, cautious hope for healthier family relationships, moving forward, and pride in the business I had built, despite lack of family support. The evening concluded with final hugs and promises to get together soon. As my parents prepared to leave, my mother pulled me aside for a private moment. I'd love to see your main office, she said tentatively. If that would be all right, I want to understand what you've built. I'd like that, Mom, I replied. How about next week? She nodded eagerly. Next week would be perfect. As my family departed, and the restaurant staff began clearing the private dining room, Marcus approached with a knowing smile. Family dynamics are complicated beasts, aren't they? He observed. I hope tonight brought some resolution. It's a start, I replied. Thank you for your timely arrival. He laughed. Pure coincidence, though. The look on your sister's face when I called you boss was priceless. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way. As I prepared to leave, I stopped by the kitchen to thank the staff for their excellent service. Carlos looked up from his dessert preparation with a grin. "So that's why you knew so much about the restaurant business," he said. "You're literally the boss." I smiled. I try to understand every aspect of my restaurants, including the staff experience. Your insights were valuable. "Glad I didn't say anything too embarrassing," he replied. "Though I stand by my comment about your sister." We both laughed, the honest connection between us surviving the revelation of my position. In that moment, I realized that some of the most authentic interactions in my life came from people who saw me clearly from the beginning, unlike my family who had needed a dramatic revelation to recognize my worth. One week after my mother's birthday dinner, I stood in the executive offices of Walker Restaurant Group, watching Eleanor take in the scope of my business operations. The 34th floor downtown location offered spectacular views of Boston Harbor, but my mother's attention was fixed on the awards lining the walls and the busy staff moving purposefully through the modern open workspace. "This is extraordinary, Amanda," she said, genuine awe in her voice. "I had no idea." "This is just the corporate headquarters," I explained. "We have regional offices in Providence, Burlington, and Hartford as well." I guided her through the test kitchen where our culinary team was developing seasonal menu items, the marketing department where campaigns were being created for our various restaurant concepts, and finally to my corner office with its wall of windows and elegant, minimalist design. "You've built an empire," my mother observed, running her fingers along the spines of industry reference books on my shelves. "All while we thought you were just cooking." "I do still cook," I told her. "I test every signature dish personally. But yes, my role is primarily executive now." My mother sank into one of the visitor chairs, looking suddenly tired. "I keep thinking about all the times we dismissed your career, all the condescending comments and changed subjects. How did you bear it, without screaming at us?" I sat across from her, considering the question. "I focused on building something meaningful. Eventually, I hoped you would see it, and if you didn't," I shrugged. "I still had the satisfaction of creating something successful on my terms." "That's very mature," my mother said. "More mature than we deserved." "It wasn't always easy," I admitted. "There were many family dinners when I wanted to list my accomplishments, force you all to acknowledge what I was achieving. But that validation needed to come from within. External approval, even from family, couldn't be my measuring stick for success." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry we made you feel less than. Your father and I were so locked into our definition of achievement that we couldn't see the incredible businesswoman you were becoming." "Different paths can lead to success," I said gently. "That's something I hope our family can understand going forward." My mother nodded, wiping away a tear. "Diana texted me this morning," she mentioned, changing the subject slightly. "She asked for your personal number. She wants to reach out, try to repair your relationship." I felt a mixture of wariness and hope. The dynamics between Diana and me are complicated. One revelation doesn't fix years of condescension. "I know," my mother acknowledged. "But she seems genuinely interested in knowing you better. The real you, not the version she constructed in her mind." "I'll give her a chance," I decided. "But rebuilding trust will take time." My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Lunch today. Want to hear how the family office tour goes?" Daniel had been my rock throughout this family revelation, offering perspective and support without pushing his opinions. Unlike my family, he had recognized my ambition and business acumen from our first meeting. His unwavering belief in me had been crucial during times when family disappointment threatened to undermine my confidence. "I should let you get back to work," my mother said, rising from her chair. "Thank you for showing me all this. I'm so proud of you, Amanda. I should have said that years ago." The words I had longed to hear for so long finally came, and I found myself embracing my mother with genuine emotion. The journey toward family healing had only begun, but this felt like an important step. After seeing my mother out, I returned to my office, where Sarah had arranged my afternoon schedule. As I reviewed upcoming meetings, I reflected on the lessons of the past week. True respect couldn't be demanded. It had to be earned through consistent action and integrity. My family had finally recognized my professional success, but the most meaningful relationships in my life were with people like Daniel, Sarah, and my executive team, who had valued me from the beginning. Later that afternoon, I hosted a quarterly dinner with my regional managers at our flagship restaurant. As the team discussed growth strategies and customer experience initiatives, I made sure everyone had equal opportunity to share ideas, regardless of their position in the company hierarchy. Michael, my operations director who had been with me since the first restaurant, leaned over during a break in the conversation. "You okay, boss? You seem reflective today." "Just thinking about the importance of seeing people for who they really are, not who we expect them to be," I replied. "Deep thoughts for a Tuesday," he joked. "But I get it. That's why your restaurants succeed where others fail. You see potential in people and concepts that others miss." His observation struck me as profoundly true. My business had thrived precisely because I valued diverse perspectives and authentic connections. The very qualities my family had dismissed: my interest in food service, my collaborative approach to leadership, my willingness to take unconventional paths, had become my greatest professional strengths. As the dinner concluded and my team departed with clear directives and genuine enthusiasm, I remained at the table contemplating the contrast between my professional and personal lives. In business, I had created an environment of mutual respect and appreciation. In my family, I had accepted far less, for far too long. The path forward was clear. I would approach family relationships with the same standards I applied to my professional life. I would remain open to reconciliation while maintaining boundaries that protected my self-worth. Real respect wasn't based on titles or achievements, but on seeing and valuing each person's authentic self. My phone buzzed with a text from Diana. "Would love to meet for coffee next week. I have a lot to learn about who you really are." I smiled slightly, typing back Tuesday at 2 p.m. "The Crescent Cafe near your hospital. It's one of mine, but the coffee is excellent regardless." The journey toward genuine family understanding would be long and probably bumpy, but it had finally begun. And unlike the young woman who had once craved family approval above all else, I now approached this journey from a position of strength and self-knowledge. Success wasn't measured by others' recognition, but by the integrity with which I lived my life and ran my business. I had built something meaningful, treated people with respect, and remained true to my passion despite obstacles. That was the true victory, more significant than any moment of vindication at a birthday dinner. Have you ever been underestimated by family or friends until they finally saw your true worth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Sometimes the sweetest success is proving wrong those who never believed in you. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more true life experiences, and share with someone who might need a reminder that success comes in many forms. Remember, validation should come from within, not from others' approval. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope to see you in the next video.